Welcome back to the Fast Forward Sailing YouTube channel. In this video we're going to be covering all you need to know before the second SailGP event kicks off in Taranto, Italy this weekend. Now just a quick explanation of what SailGP is for those of you who don't know. SailGP can be likened to the America's Cup World Series or the now extinct Extreme Sailing Series. It's raced in catamarans that can reach speeds of over 50 knots, hence the class name F50. The F50 class is a modified version of the class used in the 2017 America's Cup. So if you like the catamaran era of the America's Cup, then you'll probably enjoy watching SailGP. SailGP boasts the best sailors in the world, including Tom Slingsby, Nathan Outeridge and Jimmy Spithill. So with SailGP explained, let's get on with the video. Today we're going to be talking about Ben Ainslie and Peter Burling stepping out of SailGP for the next two events. We're also going to be discussing the umpire's decision on who was at fault in the collision between Japan and USA last event. We'll also go over the racing format, where to watch the event, what the race times are, what the forecast is, and more. So without further ado, let's get into it. First up, we have the umpire's decision on who was at fault in the collision between USA and Japan last event. This was the big talking point from last time. It's one of the most dramatic things we've seen on SailGP so far. The umpires recently released their decision on who was at fault, and they concluded that both teams were at fault and would therefore receive the maximum penalty. Now, to refresh our memories, let's rewatch the collision as it happened. So on first look, it looks like the Japanese team is at fault there. We see them coming in on port tack here, the USA is on starboard here, and it looks like Japan just takes too long to tack. So they're just leaving it a bit too last minute, and because the turning circle of the F50s is not instant, they didn't leave enough time before initiating the tack. So Japan is clearly at fault. What is less clear, however, is how the USA are at fault. This has made the umpire's decision far from popular. We can see some of the bemusement from fans in these Instagram comments. What stands out here, how everyone thinks this is a simple port starboard. However, the umpire's decision was that the USA was also at fault because they failed to keep clear. Japanese skipper Nathan Outeridge even came to Jimmy Spithill to apologise after they came off the water. But after the final standings were released, both were shocked to learn that the US SailGP team, as well as Japan, had been assigned the maximum penalty for the collision, which resulted in the team dropping to last place overall. Jimmy Spithill says, "We review the footage for days. When you watch the replay and listen to the comms, you can't argue that Japan didn't know a collision was possible almost a minute ahead of time. Watching the USA onboard cameras, we got flung like rag dolls. We simply didn't know or expect them to tack and turn so slowly. On these boats, at these speeds, there is no reaction time." Fast forward to 2 weeks after the end of the Bermuda event, Spithill and Outeridge together had a hearing with the SailGP umpire team to argue that the maximum penalty assigned to the USA was not only unfair, but also potentially set a precarious precedent that could be exploited. However, this was ultimately unsuccessful. The umpire's response was that having concluded that both boats broke Rule 14, that all boats are responsible for avoiding collisions, we looked again at the situation. Currently, this process gives us no discretion as to the penalty, no matter what the relative culpability of each team is, which, in this case, we do feel is harsh on the USA, but we don't feel that with the current rules and policies, we can or should change those rules and policies after the fact. Looking at the overhead footage, we can clearly see that the USA made no attempt to avoid a collision, and hence they broke Rule 14, that all boats are responsible for avoiding collisions. So even if you are in a port starboard, you should be attempting to get out the way if you're the starboard boat, if you know the port boat is not getting out the way. And this rule is especially important when you're racing high-speed catamarans where lives are potentially at stake. However, admittedly, it doesn't seem like the USA saw Japan, so it could be we need to do something to improve the visibility on the boats, or perhaps have a built-in sensor system which alerts boats when they are close to a collision. So after the umpires released their decision, Jimmy Spithill said that ultimately we race at the discretion of the umpires and the rules by which we compete. My mind has kept replaying the event when we went from fighting for the podium to being wiped out of the competition. But the bigger part of me wonders how this affects racing when an unsolicited penalty can kick you further out of a competition you already were taken out of. If there is anything good to come of this, it's that an opportunity now exists to improve the rules going forward on the circuit in conjunction with the officials and umpires. Now, I certainly would be supportive of attempts to avoid situations like this in future, but I'm not exactly sure which part of the rules I would change. So if you have any thoughts on that, let me know in the comments below. So on to the next news story now. Peter Burling and Blair Tuke are going to be dropping out of the next two SailGP events. They join Ben Ainslie, who's also dropped out as helm of the British team for the next two SailGP events, including Italy this weekend. Ben Ainslie will be replaced by laser gold medalist and American Magic team member Paul Goodison, and Pete Burling will be replaced by Arnaud Saroufagas, I believe is how you pronounce it, as the helm of a New Zealand boat. Australian James Wabowski will be coming on board as flight controller, and Kiwi Jason Saunders, finally a name I can pronounce, will be coming on board as a wing trimmer. So Pete Burling and Blair Tuke are dropping out of the next two SailGP events to concentrate on their Olympic campaign for the 49er class, which they won gold medal for in 2016, and they'll be hoping to repeat their success in Tokyo this summer. So it's an understandable decision on their part. Burling and Tuke struggled to get the New Zealand team up to speed at the last SailGP. Admittedly, it was their first SailGP event and they had little to no training in the boat, and they had been improving as the event went on. So it will be interesting to see how the New Zealand team fare this time round without Burling and Tuke on board. Let me know whether you think the updated New Zealand SailGP team will improve on the performance from New Zealand last time. Burling and Tuke will provide long distance advice to the team in Italy that will have fellow America's Cup stars Andy Maloney, who recently won the Finn Gold Cup, and Josh Jr. in charge of things on the ground in Taranto. So Burling and Tuke are still going to be very involved. They are, after all, the co-CEOs of the New Zealand team, so they can't drop out completely. They will be returning to the circuit for the Denmark Regatta in late August once the Olympics are completed. Now, just quickly before our next news story, if you can just gently tap the thumbs up button below, that would be much appreciated. Doing so helps these videos reach new people and helps me keep putting out this content. So with that said, on with the video. Now for another SailGP news story before we get into the details of the event this weekend. According to this article, there will be a documentary made about the Denmark SailGP team. Fans will be able to go beneath the surface of SailGP like never before as part of a new campaign and documentary series to be launched in the coming weeks. The first of 3 extended feature documentary episodes on the Denmark SailGP team is set to be released on the 1st of July. It will give viewers and access all areas past to the Danish camp as it prepares for Season 2 of SailGP. Now, these behind-the-scenes sports documentaries seem to have become more popular over the last few years, so it will be interesting to see how this does, and hopefully it brings more attention to the sport. I'll certainly be watching it if I can get my hands on it in the UK. Will you be watching it? I must say I probably prefer to watch a documentary about one of the more successful SailGP teams, but hopefully the documentary won't be exclusively focusing on the Danish team. Right, now for some details about the event this weekend. We'll be going over where to watch the action, what times the racing will be on, the forecast, the results so far, and my predictions for the top 3. So firstly, if you're wondering where to watch the action, you can go to the SailGP website and it has a page on how to watch. It gives the timings for the Sky Sports broadcast, which I believe will be the timings for the other broadcasts. Although last time the first day of racing was filmed the day before and wasn't actually live. I'm not sure how many people recognise that, but for those of you who did you feel it ruined the action knowing it wasn't live? So the racing will be taking place on the Saturday and Sunday, both days starting at 12:30 British Summer Time. So if you want to know the time in your locale, the SailGP website may update to your timing automatically, or you can just do a Google search for British Summer Time to whatever your time zone is. So the action will be on Sky Sports, it will be on the SailGP app, it will be on YouTube, which is where I'll be watching it, and it will be on Facebook. This is the forecast for Taranto on Saturday and Sunday. It's looking like it's going to be a light wind event, with probably no reason to race a day earlier because it's light winds on Friday too. So we got an average speed of around 8 knots on both days. So hopefully this will be enough to get some exciting racing in, although I don't expect to see quite the action we saw on the Sunday of the last SailGP event. While we're talking about wind speeds, do you think that the SailGP broadcast team are going to be switching back over to showing boat speeds and wind speeds in knots, or do you think they're going to stick to kilometers per hour? Let me know what you think, and perhaps more importantly, which you prefer and why. Right, finally, let's head over and look at the Season 2 leaderboard so far, and I'll give you my predictions for the top 3 in Italy. So at the top, we have Ben Ainslie with 10 points. He finished the last event first, so he gets the maximum of 10 points, and each team finishing below gets 1 point less. So just going back to how the racing is run, the event starts with several fleet races, which decides the top 3, and the top 3 go into a winner-takes-all final. So last time Tom Slingsby had performed the best up until the final, but Ben Ainslie came out on top because he was able to win the final race. Some people saw that as a little bit unfair on Tom Slingsby and the Australians, but the other side to that is it does provide exciting high-stakes racing for the last race. Personally, I think having 3 boats in the final race makes it more interesting than a match race because the boats can't simply focus on one other boat. They have to always be looking around them at 2 other boats, so that adds an interesting element to the strategy. So it seems like the British team is the one to watch, having won the last 2 SailGP events. However, they may be affected by missing their world-class skipper Ben Ainslie, and I personally don't see them winning the event. I think Tom Slingsby was probably the stronger helm last event overall, and he just got a bit unlucky, so I'd be putting my money on him. As for the other 2 to make up the podium, I'd think that Nathan Outeridge and Jimmy Spithill, who took each other out last time, will come back fighting and will be well up there. I think the other team that could challenge for a top 3 spot is the British team, but I'm not sure how well Goodison will get on with such little time at the helm. Let me know your predictions for the top 3 in the comments below. With that said, I'm going to leave the video there. I'm going to be putting out more videos about SailGP, so you might want to consider pressing the subscribe button, and then you'll see a notifications bell, and if you hit that, YouTube will send you notifications each time I release a new video. So with that said, leave a thumbs up if you like the video, and I'll see you in the next video.